And I like Brian's explanation this morning of the $250,000 home. That was a good explanation.
Yeah, and I got that in
The
there.
bicep, they said.
Well, and
Yeah.
well, and one of the things
Yeah, it goes to elbow.
you talk about money. So if your house in the city of Clayton is valued at your property tax is valued at $170,000, which is about a $240,000 home after the rollbacks and all that. For fire and EMS, you pay $170 a year or $13.50 a month for that service. That's what you pay.
A cell phone bill a month.
Yeah, I said you probably pay more on your family's cell phone plan
probably do.
in a month than you pay for fire and EMS for an entire year. And police is not going to be too far because our levies are very similar.
Yeah.
So I mean that's what I'm saying. When you break it down like that, you're saying $13.50 a month is what you have paid for to get a fire department that went from a class 5 ISO rating to a class 2 because that was equipment, staffing, training, response times, the things that we've done without asking you for any monetary support until now.
So what we'll do also, don't be afraid to have some interchange. Like, you can ask Brian a question, or Brian can say, hey, our levies are similar, and it's sort of like what you were doing just now. Just talk about it a little bit. So when we're ready, are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Oh, you already have it on record. Okay. Great.
It's called editing.
It's called editing. you said we'll edit.
Gotta edit.
Well, good evening. Welcome to Clayton Concerned Citizens. And this evening we're doing a podcast on issue 6, which is going to be a earned income tax issue on the ballot in November. And with me, I have 4 distinguished gentlemen from Clayton who are going to talk about the issue, explain what it is, and then explain why each one of their various departments, the fire, police, and roads and maintenance, need this particular levy to pass and why it's so critical that it does. So I'm going to start with Kevin. And Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us how long. Most everybody knows you anyway, but tell us how long you've been with Clayton and what your position is.
I'm Kevin Schweitzer. I'm the Director of Finance. I've been with Clayton since 2007. Before that, I spent 16 years with the State Auditor's Office, so I was auditing local governments, making sure monies were spent properly and no thefts, and lived in the community my whole life, the Northmont community. That's one of the reasons I came to Clayton's, because I wanted to take my knowledge and benefit and try to help the city I lived in, and so that's why I was here. I've been here 17 years now, so
you kind of know what you're doing.
yeah.
And I know you're too modest to state this, but you've received numerous awards for your work with the city of Clayton and the financial work that you do.
Yeah, each year we get a Distinguished Budget Award from the Government Finance Officers Associations every year, and then we also, once our audit's completed, GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, also critiques our annual comprehensive financial report, which is both those documents are a little more detailed than were required, but we want to have more transparency and get the information out there. So those are both critiqued by them, and we've received awards since I've been there on those.
Well, great. Well, let's turn to issue 6, which is the earned income tax levy, which is going to be on the November ballot. And part of Clayton Concerned Citizens is we want to make sure that the people have the truth so that they know what it is they're voting on and why they're voting on it. There's a lot of misinformation out there in social media, and so we want to do this podcast so that people get it straight from your mouths as to what the issue is and why it exists. So, Kevin, why don't you start off by explaining to us what issue 6 is?
So issue 6 basically is a 1% increase in income taxes, which 0.5 of 50% of the increase goes towards police and 50% goes towards fire. those monies will go into the police fund, fire fund, and have to be used for those departments and can't be used for anything else. But it's a 1% income tax increase, but also it is restoring the 100% credit for taxes that you pay in your work city up to 2.5% if it passes, because currently we have a 50% credit, and you only get credit for 0.75. So you're paying that in addition to whatever you're paying in your work city. So and with that credit, the ballot language states in there that the credit cannot be lowered without going back to the voters for approval. So that was something we heard last time from the citizens to make sure that could not change. So we had that actually put in the ballot language.
So what is actually taxed? I know some people get a little confused as to whether their Social Security, for example, is going to be taxed.
This tax is on earned income, so W-2 wages. You have some rental income, or a sole proprietor, but Social Security, retirement interest, that's not taxed. Lottery and gambling winnings are taxed. That was mandated by the state, which also mandates that you have to make estimated payments if you're going to owe more than 200%. So that was something the state did, not us. And I know that's been a kind of confusing for people. But if they, if they do not make estimated payments and they get a penalty and interest, I always work with them, waive it the first time so they're aware of it, and so they know that they can get caught up and make those estimated payments that the state are requiring.
Kevin, so a question for you. So we have a lot of police, fire, teachers, or other government retirees that live within the city. Are those pensions taxed?
No, like Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, police and fire, none of that. Any kind of retirement is not taxed.
And if say I have a relative that worked in a city that had a 2% income tax last year. Talk to me how that changes this year if this would pass, or when it is passed and it goes in effect. How is that changing what I pay this year versus when that goes in effect? Does it save me money? Does it not? Explain that to me a little bit.
So currently you're paying 2% in your work city. You only get credit for 0.75%, which is 50% of our 1.5%. So you're going to pay 0.75 to Clayton. So in total, you're paying 2% your work city plus 0.75 to Clayton. That's 2.75. If this passes, you get the 100% credit. So now you're paying 2%. You get credit for all that 2%. You'll owe 0.5 to Clayton, so you'll pay 2.5 in total. So you're saving a 0.25%.
Okay, so it's actually for people who most likely work
Right.
outside of the city, will either pay the same or less if this tax goes in effect.
Correct. And what this is doing really is taking most of the burden off of residents of Clayton and trying to put it more onto the people that work in Clayton that don't reside in Clayton.
And those are the people not just who work in the city of Clayton,
Right.
but everybody who works, not the government part of it, but everybody who works within the city boundaries of Clayton.
Correct.
All those businesses and stuff, and trying to put the burden back on them to provide the service versus putting it on the residents.
Correct. So like all of us we're going to pay 2.5%.
Yeah, good points, Brian, because I know a lot of people have been confused about that. And why don't we take a minute, Kevin, if you would, and explain why this is necessary? Why do we have to have this tax rate increase?
Looking at our revenue projections and our expense projections, obviously expenses are outpacing our revenue. So looking at our general fund balance, which the general fund is a main fund balance, but we use that to make transfers to the police, fire, debt service funds to help those departments because they don't have enough revenue to support themselves. So the general fund helps them out. So looking at 2025, we are going to be down, around $1 million in the general fund budget. Once we get to the end of 2026, we're in the red. I know people say, you need to work, live within your budget. Well, by trying to work within our budget, if we can't increase revenue, we have to decrease expenses. And when you look at our expenses, it's all personnel. We are a service organization, so it's all payroll related. The police department is 81% of their expenses are payroll. It's 86% for the fire and 67% for the service department. So just the cost of the police and fire, what this income tax is for. I mean, to outfit them in uniforms and protective gear, and then their salaries and pension, insurance. I mean, you're looking at the average cost for police officer is $133,000, and for the fire, you're looking at $129,000, and that's a year. So, our revenues are kind of not keeping up. The costs have went up higher. Clayton's known as a bedroom community. We have a lot of houses. We're not like some of our neighboring cities where they have a great mix of residential homes, but they also have commercial industry and retail, and so they get income tax from all those. We're pulling basically from our residents. We do have some big businesses, but so we looked at the property tax side. The problem with property tax is when you do a property tax levy, they take all the value inside the city of Clayton times the millage of the levy, and that's the most you can collect on that levy. So you're never going to collect more. So even if property values go up, the county and the state uses things called reduction factors to bring down the rate to make sure you're collecting the same amount on the value for that levy that you know. So we're never going to see increases in property taxes. And then what happened back in when all the 2008 with the housing market, there's a clause in the state law that when values dropped and they took our new value times that millage, that became our new cap, and it was lower than what we've seen. So we've never been able to recapture any of that because that's our new ceiling. So that's why we decided income tax will adjust with new families coming in, new businesses. So we're trying to we looked at both ways, tried to see what we could do, and income tax made the most sense. And then
well, and also one of the things that we talk about internally, income tax, no tax is, oh, please tax me more. But when you look at income tax versus property tax, income tax is more forgiving than a property tax. And what I mean by that is the more income you earn, the more you have to pay percentage-wise as that tax. But if you're not working for whatever reason, you're paying no tax. If we put this on your property, doesn't matter what your life situation or your work status is, you have to pay that tax. So when I say it's more forgiving, it's because if you're working and earning more, you have to pay this tax. If you're not working for whatever reason,
or
retired, you don't have to pay that tax. If we put it on your property, there is none of that stipulation. It's an unforgiving tax. It is a set tax that you must pay regardless of life situation.
Right. So let's put a couple numbers to this, if you don't mind. And before you do that, I want to make sure that everybody is clear. When did the income tax for the city of Clayton actually come into existence?
That was back in 2004. I went to the voters for the 1.5%.
So that's 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Have we had an income tax rate increase in 20 years?
No, the rate has not increased since then.
Have expenses increased since then?
Definitely. I mean, you look at insurance and fuel, equipment, supplies, all that has went up.
So it's sort of like if you compare it to somebody that has a household, that they go to work and they're still getting paid in 2004 wages, they're not going to be able to buy as much as they could back in 2004.
Correct.
And so let's see how that's impacted us, because property taxes you've talked about, they have remained somewhat level.
Right. And then your whole property tax bill, the city of Clayton only gets 11%. I mean, you're seeing the schools get the biggest chunk of your tax bill, and that's around 65%. And then the Montgomery County gets 19%, and then the fund a little bit goes to the library and CTC. But we're only getting 11% of your whole property tax. That's why it takes a lot of millage to generate anything.
Right. And we have the police and fire levies on that.
Yeah.
Right.
And the last increase we had with that was 2008.
And a problem with 2008, as we mentioned before. Yeah. So when we originally went back in 2008 and put this up front, at least from the fire side and even the police, we're trying to increase our tax base. Back then, our property tax only brought in close to $700,000, and we knew with the staffing trends, the loss of paid on call, which is people responding from their houses to the fire department to respond to your emergency, was dwindling. We weren't able to get volunteers. there wasn't a 40-hour work week anymore, and life was busy, so we couldn't retain our volunteers. So we knew in-house staffing was going to have to increase. So we wanted to say, how can we get $1.5 million? So we put the millage on there. And due to the housing market, once it got passed, we were supposed to get another $750,000 to $800,000. We ended up getting $300,000 because of the values went down. And those dollars, as Kevin said earlier, we can never capture again.
No.
So, we were planning for this back in 2008, but we didn't know, or 2007 really, but when the housing market crashed, we lost 60% of that increased value that we never can ever get back.
Yeah, and people don't understand that. I mean, it is somewhat complicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly the development in the city of Clayton has been somewhat stagnant for the 20 years since 2004. That would have, I think, spread around the taxes so that individuals don't have to bear such a high burden. But let's make sure that the listeners are really clear on what we're looking at here. So in 2026, if we do not pass issue 6, where are we going to be?
Like I said, we will have, expended all our general fund. And then, like I said, that supplements your police, your fire, your service, so those will be negative as well. So you're looking at having to cut expenses, and like I stated before, our expenses are in people, they're in payroll. So you're looking at cutting personnel, cutting police officers, firefighters, street workers. And then, you have to look at the cuts and see what we're doing. And there's also the threat if what we're doing is not working, or we can't cut enough, or there's other factors. I mean, you're looking at the possibility that the state auditor's office comes in, puts us under fiscal emergency or fiscal watch, and they take over running the city.
And then they do what they want to do.
Yeah, and they don't care. They're a state. They're not vested in the community
Right.
like we are, and they will do what they need to do to try to get it back into black.
Well, do you have some numbers with you as to how much in the red we would be over the 26, 27, 28, and 29 if we didn't pass this?
Like I said, it's close to $700,000 in 2026, and then it starts snowballing. I mean, you're looking at 2027, you'll be up close to $3 million. Just if we keep the expenses going.
That's in the red.
Right, that'd be negative. So, I mean, obviously that's not going to happen because we would be making cuts. And that's the only way we can balance it. If we don't increase revenue, we got to decrease expenses. So
to put it into plain language, if this does not pass in 2026, we have to cut $700,000 worth out of our budget.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Actually, it's more than that. It's not 700,000. You could. That's just to keep you at level.
Yes.
And then the following year, you're going to have to add even cut.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Following year, it'd be $3 million. I think
$2
you
million,
said.
roughly $2.3
what
million.
we're seeing now is there's the perception out there that the city everybody at the city makes they're overpaid. Actually, if you look at our police and fire, they're not overpaid. They're maybe middle towards the bottom. We're seeing our police chief, fire chief can attest to this, that we have young guys coming in now. They get their experience, their training, and then they move on because there's other opportunities out there where they can make more monies. Even our seasonal guys, they come in, they're making less than what you can go work at McDonald's. We start them out like at the golf course, $10, and you can go to McDonald's at $15.
And that's very true. When it comes to staffing, when we get in new officers, retrain them, we outfit them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And what they gain with us is experience. And what they do is then they transfer that experience and they move on to other departments who have a higher pay scale, and they go in as laterals. So usually when you go in as a lateral, you either go in at that pay scale or higher due to the experience that we're giving. And then we're starting over again. We're trying to recruit people, and that's our biggest problem in the police department now. If we don't get funding, is recruitment and retention. You go to an academy and there's 10 people, 15 people there. 75% of them already have jobs, and they're being sponsored through these bigger departments. And then when you come in and talk to them to try to get them to recruit, they're going to hold out and go with the person that is paying the most. I mean, we all want to have good money, and that's what they want.
And-
So we have a hard time recruiting, but then we also have a hard time retaining.
Retaining.
Because
Yeah.
once we get them trained and they start seeing what these other departments are paying and that I can't compete with, they move on. And we've lost officers. I'm 3 down, and we've lost officers due to that.
And isn't some of the retention problems actually the fear right now? I mean, in my
Yes.
opinion, I see a lot of that.
I just had an officer leave, and one of the things he in his exit interview was everything was great. He loved the city. His one concern was pass that levy. And when you have officers that have kids, family, and they're still in the community, they don't want to have that dark cloud over top of them. They're going to leave and go to, I don't want to say a more stable city, but they're going to go with a city that is well funded and stay there.
Well, and even not to mention that, even if this doesn't pass in November, the retention will be impossible to recover from. How do you recruit somebody in a city that is not fiscally sound?
Yeah.
No one's going to come to you. So as people leave, it's not like, well, we'll just go find other people. You're not going to be able to bring other people on.
Right.
And now you're not, I mean, you're basically doing away with your departments at that point, because as they leave and go get jobs, there's no one to grab. It's already, the pool is so small, and now to add an economic fear to that of stability with your finances, you're not going to be able to actually hire anybody even if you wanted to.
So
We'll never recover from that.
So let's look at that for a minute. So if we have to cut in fire or police, I've heard some people say that there will be plenty of money. And I'm kind of wondering why that would be said, unless they're talking about the property tax. And I think we've established the property tax cannot fund you. So let's talk about that for a minute. First from fire, and Randy, we're going to get to you. Just sit there and continue to look good.
Look good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Brian, why don't you tell us, how long have you been chief here?
I've been chief. I've been with the fire department for 27 years. I've been in the fire service for 30. I moved up through the ranks at Clayton. I started as a firefighter paramedic back in '97. I moved through the ranks of captain, assistant chief, and chief. I've been chief now since 2011, so 13 years. And seen a lot of changes in the department since then. We went from a paid on call, which means we had people responding from home to your emergencies. We moved to part-time, in-house coverage during the day, and then part-time or paid on call at night. And then as you can't get more people, all of our staffing changes has happened out of necessity, not out of want. And you look at our call volume back in '98 was a little bit over 800 calls. In 2024, this year, we're projected to be over 2,800 calls. So we're more than 3.5 times the amount of call volume that we do. And we've never, since 2008, we haven't asked for an increase. But when you look at that, in 1998, we had 5 full-time people. We have 18 now. And Kevin told you the numbers. It's close to $130,000 per person.
Now, is that their salary, or is that?
That's salary, benefits. That's total employee cost. That's retirement, health insurance, things that we're required to pay through the state with disability insurance, BWC, uniforms, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
That's what that cost is to us. And we've never come back to the residents and asked for more funding. What we did is we used the general fund, so we didn't come to you.
Right.
But now we're outpacing that with what things cost. People say, well, can't you make some cuts? Well, as you heard Kevin say earlier, we have a low margin to cut before we get to people. Our budget's 85, 86% personnel, so I have 14% of a $2.7 million budget in operational side, which is fuel, uniform, just very little things that we run the operations with right around $300,000 a year.
So explain for a minute the impact this is going to have on a homeowner if you start losing personnel.
Okay, so fire departments there's a grading process out there for fire departments called ISO. That's the Insurance Service Offices, and they come in and they grade our fire department. Back in 1998, we were graded a 5, and then your insurance rates for your house are based on that grading. So insurance companies come in and say, okay, you're an ISO 5. Based on that, that goes in to help determining your insurance for the year. Over the last 25 years, we have dropped that from a 5 to a 2. So we have actually lessened your house insurance by a considerable amount. If we don't have staffing and we can't continue to do the things that we do to operate the way we do, that grading will go back up. If it gets back up to a 5 again, because of staffing or what have you, that's going to cost you almost $1,100 more a year just in your property insurance.
Wow. And your homeowner's insurance?
Yes.
Wow.
And it can. So every insurance company uses it a little different. But we have, and I'm using this from a local, which I won't go into the details, but this is coming from a local insurance agent that called me about a house that they actually put the wrong ISO rating on it and gave them a higher rating than what it was. And because of that higher rating, it was $2,200 more.
Wow. So so what you're saying is, if I hear you right, is that if we don't pass issue 6, there is a very good chance that our ISO rating will get higher and cost individuals more money.
Yes.
So
Yep.
it's actually going to cost more money than what they may actually be paying in the income tax
That is correct.
increase.
That's yearly. Yes, that's yearly. And then we go to property tax to answer your question along the way around.
Yeah.
When you look at property tax, so for the fire department alone, we haven't asked for an increase since 2008. And if your house is valued for property tax purposes, if you look at, what is my house valued?
The assessed value.
Yeah, assessed value. Thank you, Kevin. At $170,000, and that's probably close to $230,000 to $240,000 of actual value when you go to for sale. You only pay $170 a year towards fire and EMS based on that value.
Wow.
A year. So you break that down, it's $13.50 a month.
A month.
That you pay to fire and police. And as I said, we went from 5 full-time people to 18, and we have not asked for an increase since 2008.
All right, so let's very briefly, what you're getting is you're getting a property tax, which what you get from the property tax, the revenue you get from there, doesn't come close to funding you. Is that
No.
what you're telling me?
Yeah, so the property tax that we get from our revenue stream from property tax is around $1 million a year.
And how much does it cost? What's your budget?
Our budget's $2.7 million.
So there's 1.7 million that has to be funded from
Yes.
somewhere.
And we make some of that up with EMS billing that, we, up until this point, we have only asked for what the insurance gives us. And we're projected to be right around $500,000. So again, that makes our budget 1.5. So 1.7, depending, usually we'll get a little more, but so we're usually asking anywhere between $700,000 and $800,000 a year from the general fund to make up that difference. We are going to hard billing. We just started that process. That's what we said we would do if it didn't pass the last time.
Uh-huh.
So, and now what we're doing is if wherever your insurance doesn't pay, we're going to pass that on to the resident to pay through the Ohio Attorney General's office. So they have the debt collection side of that now, and it will be a debt collection.
But then they'll keep some of it too.
Yes.
The other 2 cities, Brian, that we're in collaborative with, they already do have hard billing.
They both already do hard billing. They've done it for some years.
So briefly, the collaborative.
Mhm.
What happens? The collaborative's been great. We've saved millions of dollars through that collaborative
Yes.
in equipment,
Yes.
for example.
Yes.
So what happens if we get kicked out of the collaborative because we no longer have the amount of people that you need in order to service the community?
Okay, so when we joined the collaborative, we've actually reduced our staffing since we joined the collaborative because we were operating 2 stations back before the collaborative. We operated Station 84 and Station 85. So when we became a collaborative, we were actually able to take people from one firehouse and move them into 85s, and we were actually reduced our overall number per day by 1. So that saved us money right off the bat. But in the collaborative, we were duplicating so many services and things like that. And even with operational costs, the way we work together, since 2021, we have saved over $2.5 million by being part of the collaborative. And if we can't fulfill our obligation to the collaborative, which is it's just not, you can do whatever you want. I mean, these are ordinances that were passed by all the 3 individual cities
Right.
to form this, and that you are obligating to provide this type of level of service. If we can't maintain that type of level of service, they could say, I'm not saying they would, but they could say, if you're not going to provide that service that you committed yourself to, then you're no longer part of the collaborative. What's that mean? Now I'm not going to provide the same service I am today to our residents. I don't have the staffing nor the equipment, because some of that savings was we didn't replace fire apparatus. We didn't replace medics. because it saved us money, and we didn't need them as part of the collaborative. So, I would need like $2 million up front just to put things back together to open 2 stations, then if I could find people. I mean, so that if we're not part of the collaborative, now you just increased our costs dramatically. So again, if this doesn't pass and we're no longer part of the collaborative, it is going to cost more than what we're paying today.
All right. I think that's a great way of trying to explain it to the people out there. Hopefully, it will serve to correct some of their misconceptions. Let's talk about police for a minute. How is it going to impact police?
Well, not passing this levy is going to increase. We're going to have trouble staffing, and we're a service department. We don't generate revenue, as Kevin can tell you. And my budget's right now about 2.5, 2.7. From that, we have a levy which draws about $1.1 million. The rest is coming from the general fund, and that's all personnel costs. As Kevin has said, we're 81, 82% personnel. I know there's rumors out there that says we're overstaffed. I'm authorized 20 officers, and if I go by the FBI standards, it's 1.9 per thousand. I should have 23 officers. There's other jurisdictions comparable to our size have 23, 24 officers. I'm currently doing it with 15.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
We got positions that we have not filled.
Right, we have not filled
police and
positions
fire.
because, we
Because of the
needed to
budget.
cut. And when those positions became available, the smart thing was to hold off hiring. And as Kevin said, top out is 135 to put an officer, 135,000 to put an officer on the street. We're saving money by not filling those 2 positions. But, that affects, retention. When officers can't get off, or we have injuries, pregnancies, unexpected illnesses, like I said, how do you fill those gaps? Because we're running the minimums. And, what you do is then you stop doing what you do and only taking priority calls. When people call and want a police officer, we want to show up and solve the problem that's there. But if you don't have enough officers on the streets, at some point those calls have to be held, and we're only going to take priority calls. So, the level of service goes down.
And Chief, real quick, I know both of you guys have mentioned the fact that how much you're taking out general fund. Kevin, have you crunched any numbers on what that 0.5% will do for them? Will it make them whole or close to it, or?
Yeah, it will. It will definitely. The police it takes more transfers than the fire department, but it will. Once we get the collections coming in, it will make the police department whole with the property tax they're getting now plus that 0.5%.
And if this passes in November, that doesn't happen right away.
No, we won't start collecting this income tax until January 1st of 2026. That way, it gives us time to get some information out to the residents. Gives the residents time to work with their payroll. If they're having the extra 0.75 withheld now, they can get that stopped. It's plenty of time. Gives Central Collection Agency, CCA, does our collections time to adjust their forms and information in their systems. And then we'll also be able to, since we don't have this 50% credit, you'll be able to e-file online. And and like I said, we were projecting 2026 is when we need the money, so we're not trying to take extra than we need. So we'll do it the year we need it. So that's when we'll start seeing that the collection will be 1/1 of 26, but it will sustain the police and fire department then.
So, and how much, and I know I asked Brian this question, how much does the police take beyond what you get out of the levy that you need to sustain yourself?
Anywhere from 1.3 to 1.5 million dollars.
That comes out of our general fund.
That comes out of the general fund.
Yes.
Again, we're not a revenue
Right.
source for the city at all.
A lot of
We
people
provide a service
And I like a lot of
for the
people
residents.
think, they write tickets, they get a bunch of money. The
Right.
courts keep all the most of the
Right.
money. We get a small
Right.
amount.
I was told that for every ticket we write, it's $27. We get 3. If
Yeah.
you look at that, that's less than 1% of my budget.
Yep.
That's not going to fund anything.
Yeah, so the courts are taking that money. Back in 2011, we were getting over $1 million from the state. This year, we're only getting $190,000 from local government fund from the state. The state is just keep cutting us, cutting the schools. They're building up their rainy day fund. So they're basically saying to the cities, townships, counties, schools, you know, it's on you to put a tax
Yeah.
and collect from your residents, and you know, we're going to do what we want to do in Columbus. So.
Sounds like a perfect storm is
Yeah.
where we are right
Well,
now.
and he talked about, you know, he's down officers. Actually, you know, this year, all three departments, police, fire, and service, cut staffing. We didn't, you know, lay people off, but we had people who retired, and we did not replace those positions. And now it's putting more burdens on other people, or you run low staffed, and that affects how we operate. And you know, if you don't have the people to do the job, you're basically just doing the necessities, and we've done that. You know, we're not doing things right now we should be for ISO because we cut $200,000 out of our budget last year, just operationally and personnel wise. And then also we put off buying a medic that we need to replace, which is $350,000. So now we keep kicking that can down the road. Eventually, you're not going. You know, these medics only last for so long, and it takes 2.5 years to get them now. Since COVID, there's an issue with getting apparatus and medics. It takes you 2.5 years, so you just can't wait until you need it and then buy it. You got to wait. So you know, we've had those discussions and we put it off, and if this doesn't pass, we'll probably put it off again. And now we start affecting the service and reliability of that service.
So leaf pickup isn't the only thing that has been an issue.
No.
Yeah,
No.
it's,
But we just don't publicize those other things, and
Right.
people don't see from the outside in. Oh, they're still showing up for emergency incidents. Police department's still showing up when we call
Right.
for them. Yes, but you don't know the burden that is put on our employees to pick up the slack and to do without. You know, they don't see that
Right.
because our personnel, they're high quality individuals, and they do a good job, and they pick up slack, and and you're not seeing a big change in service out there. But we're treading water. We're not moving forward. You want a department that's moving forward and advancing and trying to better themselves. We are not in that position right now to do.
And I agree with Brian.
We are just trying to.
We all wear multiple hats. I mean, we've got a city manager wearing a, you know, the
Economic development.
economic development hat, and you know,
Didn't fill
Chief's
that
helped me.
position.
I've helped
Yeah.
Chief. We go back and forth all the time, but you know, you're getting by. You know, cutting that $1 million worth of road paving this year. That's horrible.
Well,
I mean, it
Randy-
takes forever to catch up with stuff like that.
why don't it's now your turn. Why don't we talk about this a little bit? First, tell us who you are and how long you've been with Clayton.
My name's Randy Sanders. I'm the Public Service Director here. I've been with Clayton for 10 years. Did 33 years to the state of Ohio at ODOT. At ODOT, I was administrator for the counties towards the end, and then became the roadway service manager for District 7, which is 9 counties. In that roadway service manager position, I actually had the budget for all 9 counties for materials and paving materials and stuff like that, snow and ice.
Well, why don't you tell us how many miles do we actually have of road that you have to service in Clayton?
Sure. The city of Clayton, and really was dumbfounded by this when I came from ODOT. I didn't realize there was as much road here, but there's 103 actual miles of road, and there's 247 total roads, and that is also 214 lane miles. Comparatively with our neighbors that we're in the collaborative with, Inglewood has 142 lane miles, so we're quite a bit larger than Inglewood in roads, just don't have the businesses.
Yeah.
It's a lot of homes and stuff like that, but it's very large. We're comparable to Vandalia. Vandalia has 209 lane miles, probably about the same amount of state highways we do, maybe a little bit less because they only have 40. But they have 15 employees, and we're doing it with 11. Out of those 11, one is a mechanic, so he's not on the road. 2 are crew leaders who work on a lot of facility stuff because we also have to maintain 10 facilities here, and that's us. So we do the facilities work. We we have 3 cemeteries,
The
3
parks.
parks. These other cities like Vandalia, who's equivalent to us, they have park commissions. They have park employees and other things. So, and we actually do the cemeteries. We do the maintenance and the actual burials.
So what's your budget?
My budget for maintenance itself was $500,000. If you add the employees in there, it was $1.5 million.
All right, well, they kind of have to be added.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that all comes from the general fund. Obviously, we don't have a street levy here at the city
Right.
of Clayton, and nor would we ever propose to have a street levy. But that has to come from the general fund.
So let me, and I want to get back to you in a minute, but let me throw back to Kevin. You now have 3 different departments which are taking money from the general fund. What's the percentage of the general fund that goes to them? And then what percentage is discretionary funding?
For 2024, I think the total expenses we had were around, would say around 12 million, and we're looking at 3 million going to these three departments. Plus, we have monies that we have to transfer to our debt service to pay for bond payments we have. So, it's a significant chunk, and then people, if you look at that, like I said again, we're personnel, payroll high. Even if we got rid of all the operating expenses for, say the fire department, and we only did payroll, so that's operating expenses is fuel, utilities, water, all that stuff. We still need $500,000 in transfers from the general fund to cover just the payroll side with the other property tax and EMS billings they have. So,
What's the total payroll for the city for all departments, and as it relates to discretionary funding, where we can spend money on other things other than personnel? I think once you told us it was about 89%.
Like I said, it's high for the police and fire. Services got more supplies in there because they're doing maintaining the roads and parks and stuff like that. And then admin, we have a lot of the contractual services where we're paying for the utilities and the internet and cyber services that protect from hacks and stuff like that. So so if you look at it, I think it's probably around 82% for the whole for the city.
And when you say discretional money, I'll be honest, there really is no discretional money.
Not anymore, that's for sure.
And Kevin, when we look at this from a financial standpoint, how much money are we putting back every year that we don't use for that rainy day fund that we used to have $4 to $5 million back a few years ago?
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, obviously prices have soared. And, so we used to have $4 to $5 million. What are we rolling over now? We're not rolling over anything. We're pretty much using everything we're bringing in. Or actually, we're using more than what we're bringing in. Is that correct?
Right. It's if you look at the general fund, it's especially since COVID, it's on a downward trend, and that's why we're projecting, that we'll be utilizing all of it up. It is frustrating. I work within the budget that I get approved. So if we're spending more and say we need more for training, I'll move some from some other line item we have in the budget. So I'm not asking council for more budget and spending more than we have to. I utilize the budget we have, and I think we're really good. And like I said, using what we have. It's like the fire department. They needed some new command vehicles. So we have we got one in, and so the old one that they replaced, we just don't get rid of it and buy new ones. For staff, we turned it into I gave it to the police. It's the detective's car, the admin car that we take to meetings or I go out to the PO box to collect mail. It's an old police cruiser that's been de-striped and equipment's out of it. So we're not we're using the assets we have, not just going out buying new, doing spending. When I got here, there was a huge printer sitting over in the road garage. They had got a grant for a traffic light right there at Old Salem and Taywood, and it came with a computer and a printer. And we were using a dot matrix one when I came, and my assistant was printing it out on the green bar, the old stuff. And so I said, "What is that printer doing? It's just sitting over there collecting dust." So we carried it over and used that. We just don't go out and buy new equipment. I'm a CPA. I'm cheap. So and those guys will contest to that because they always fight for me to want to spend money but it's like I said, I spent 16 years in the state auditor's office. I was looking out for taxpayer money then, making sure it was spent on a proper public purpose. It wasn't being stolen, in which I did find instances of that. But I bring that to the city, and for it's not my money to spend. It's taxpayer money, and I'm trying to make that last and be able to do the programs and provide the services that that residents expect. But it's just the way things are now. It is frustrating and it's hard.
And things to remember is, as a city, we have taken in, since I've been here, $7.5 million in grants. When we get to the 2026 point, because we've just got the 48 grant as well, that's a lot of money. I mean, if you didn't have that money,
It is.
where else would we be then? I mean, $2.5 million in grants with ODOT safety grants, road paving grants. Where would you be then?
Yeah.
And maybe talk about the CIP a little bit, because obviously we use the CIP in the service department for paving roads.
So what's CIP?
Yeah.
Say what it is. So
capital improvement budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the police department's got grants. The fire department's got like $2.5 million in grants. A lot of our equipment,
Yeah. It's
SCBA's, which is what we wear inside of a fire. We've replaced those twice now with grant funding, which is about $125,000 to $150,000 a pop that we've done. Our protective gear that we wear inside, we've got it replaced twice under grants. Our load systems and our power cots for our medic units, we got those under grants, which those are about 50 grand now a piece. Chest compression systems, all different kinds of things to better our care, and we got it through grant systems. And we've replaced them under grant system, which is very hard to do in that. So we're trying to better ourselves and use grant money to do that. Kevin was talking about staff vehicles because there was a false social media thing out there that the fire department's buying these nice vehicles and they don't need them. The fire department was only slated to get one vehicle. We're replacing a 10-year-old staff vehicle, and the police department was supposed to get some vehicles. Well, they couldn't get vehicles.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, well, we have a decent vehicle in the fire service that they can utilize. So we'll take their money this year and buy a vehicle, even though we don't want one, but we'll give them a vehicle they can use. And it took us 7 different orders just to get the vehicle we want because of COVID issues. And we just took what we could get for the cheapest we could get. We ended up getting pickup trucks, which we haven't used in the past. Police department can't use pickup trucks, but they can use a Tahoe that we had in the fire department. So we gave them that. We took the trucks because we still need to replace our fleet with whatever we can get. So that's what we did. It wasn't that the fire department is going out and buying vehicles. Oh man, their vehicle wasn't that old. We gave the new vehicle to be utilized in the police department so they could utilize it to the best of their advantage. So, we are very, very, fiscally responsible with the money and how we spend it. If people would just honestly ask us questions, they would find out very quickly that we are, instead of just assuming that what you see, I can't believe they did that. Please, we encourage you to ask questions. Encourage to call us, and we will explain. We'll tell you the truth. You may not like the facts or like what we're saying because it's the truth, but we will tell you the truth, and we are, and I believe we are very much fiscally responsible with that.
Well, and it's my hope that people watch this and watch it all the way through so that they can understand a little bit more as to why it's necessary. Randy, I wanted to get back to you for a minute. So tell us about the cost of paving roads and how has that gone up since 2004?
In 2017, our paving contract was 88 cents a square foot. The gentleman that was here before, they always did everything in square feet. It was 88 cents a square foot. The contract we sold in 2023 was $1.42 per square foot. So that's a pretty significant increase in asphalt prices. Of course, when you have oil prices going up, that affects asphalt. Obviously, fuel, everything that we do is, either 50, 60, 70% more expensive. Whether that be concrete, curb, sidewalk, you name it, it's all going up. And a lot of that's based on fuel too.
And so that has increased what you use as far as a budget?
Correct. And we've made a lot of accomplishments since 2016 because that's when the tax credit was first initiated.
Right.
We've paved 183 roads out of them 240 roads. However, as most residents will tell you, those roads will last because we don't have a big base under these roads here. They're not state highway roads. These are, they're rural roads, and you can get 10 years out of them. Those roads are going to come back up. And if they were paved in 15, 16, 17, guess what's coming? And by cutting 1 year off our paving this year, which we eliminated all of our paving this year, and that includes all the maintenance, so you don't get the stripes on the road. And people like myself, who's old, we rely on having them nice bright stripes on there. We didn't stripe this year. We didn't seal any cracks this year, which actually makes your pavement last longer. So those things are all very, very expensive.
Well, and that was actually some of that was funded through the bond that we took out.
$6 million in bonds, and that's what the tax credit was to pay for.
Right, and so that, but that had to be paid back. I mean,
we're still being paid back.
The bond is a
15-year loan, a bond. Yeah.
So, how would it impact you, Randy, or the city, I guess, as far as the service that you'd be able to provide them if issue 6 does not pass?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind, as Kevin had said earlier, and so did the other two chiefs, we're going to lose employees. I mean, we've never had a staffing research program at ODOT, but we did have a snow and ice staffing when I was at ODOT, and they based it on road miles when they're doing snow and ice, because that's a pretty important function for them. So when they're doing snow and ice, an average route was like 35 miles per person. That was to do a correct, a very good job on snow and ice. And we're running about 50 miles per person here on snow and ice. Makes it very difficult, but we're really undersized now at 11. I'm not asking for more people, but I sure don't want to lose more. And if we can get the fire department and police department funded, I think it's going to help us with the general fund and hopefully keep things moving in the right direction.
And then also he started, with the grants for paving roads, there's always a match that the city has to put in. So, if we don't have funds for the match, we can't apply for the grants. And most of the grants we do get it's infrastructure or equipment. There's some grants out there for hiring police officers, but the problem is it only pays for the first year or two, and then you're on the hook for the
Right,
rest.
Kevin.
So
It actually pays for 3 years, but it's the 3 lowest years of the police officer's contract. So if you have 5 steps, they'll pay the first 3, which is the cheapest, and then you're on the hook for the next 6 years, and you have to pay the highest wages. So once you get them, they'll pay for them, but then you have to pay the highest wages, and you're committed to keeping them there. You can't lay them off.
And Chief, for years we have been known as one of the safest cities in Ohio. And what do you think this is going to do to that?
Well, again, it all goes back to staffing. When I don't have officers to answer calls for service, we start slowing down in investigations. We start slowing down in priority calls. Felonies may or may not get investigated depending on the severity of what they are, because I don't have the staff to do that. I have a full-time detective right now who is being considered to start working the road to fill in the gaps. I've got one person off on a pregnancy who's going to be gone for 3 weeks. I have one injured officer and one retired from an injury. And again, those slots are there, and I've got to fill them. We
also,
need this.
I think, if you don't have the staffing, you're not patrolling, you're just answering calls.
Yes.
So how can you be a preventive department when you're not out in the neighborhood, you're not out in the city patrolling and trying to prevent issues from occurring? You're just reactionary now.
Well, and that's a good point. Everybody says, well, all you do is patrol. Well, when you're visible, crime goes down. One of the things we did was we had the officers make stops, and we required them to make so many traffic stops. And what we noticed in that was burglaries went down, crashes went down, and the general level of crime went down because simply the officers are out there turning on their lights.
Right.
So if you see an officer out and you see 2 or 3 officers out each shift and they're turning on their lights, you tend to go someplace else.
Well, guys, we don't have much time left, and even if we did, I'm not sure whether anybody would want to listen for more than an hour on this. But there is a subject that I do see occasionally on social media, and social media says a lot of things that just aren't true. And one of these involves Meadowbrook. And in 2013, I think it was, 2015 is when we actually were granted the Meadowbrook.
Yep.
It was given to us as a gift. We didn't have to pay for it. We did have some things that we had to pay for the first couple of years. And it has become a park for our citizens. We do things there, or we're doing things there, like fireworks, Easter egg hunts, lots of activities for the people within Clayton, which we no longer are doing because of this budget crunch that we're under. But I'd like you to talk for a minute. People say if we close Meadowbrook, that we can solve all these problems. And, I don't think, first of all, they even understand what would be involved in closing Meadowbrook. You'd have to keep it up. You'd still have to do things for insurance. And if you wanted to keep it as a viable place to sell, you'd have to do the same things you're doing to it right now.
Right, you'd have utilities.
Right, utilities. You'd have to do all the mowing. You'd have to do the fertilizer. You have to do everything that's currently being done, but you wouldn't be making any revenue. You'd just be having the expense side of it. But that said, others said, okay, sell it. Well, that's been an issue.
And that's been looked at. They've tried to sell it. Probably 4 or 5 years ago they tried to sell it, and It wasn't successful. The previous owner, who I know, tried to sell it 3 different times
Right.
and
right.
couldn't. And the city didn't take it the first time it was offered to them.
Right.
The city was offered to buy it very cheaply for a golf course.
Right.
But it was like, if we have to spend any money on a golf course, it's not worth that.
Right.
It's when it was gifted to the city that they said, let's give this a go.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to turn
and
down
one of
a
the reasons-
gift
yeah.
Yes.
worth a couple $1,000,000.
And
you
we
know?
didn't
It's-
and we didn't look at it as a golf course. We don't have any event center within the city limits that you can hold events for. The community.
Right.
We can't. There's nothing within our community that does that within the city of Clayton.
There was also talk, such a big piece of land, the way it was zoned, if it did sell to someone else, you could put a bunch of apartments there. And they were, discussing how that big of a quick of expansion, how could the city handle it? And it wouldn't have benefited one of our partners, Northmont, because it's Trotwood Schools, the way it's
Right.
in the county. So, and being honest, he gave it to us because he wrote off against, as a tax write-off. He sold another business, but it is a golf course in Ohio. So you lose 4 or 5 months out of the year of play. We did get simulators down there, but it's not the same as how much activity we're seeing. And just last year, you look at 2023, it did operate at $180,000 deficit. So we lost $180,000.
But that wasn't just a golf course. That was
That
a
was the
golf
total.
course. The total.
The banquet and the golf
banquet.
course.
And,
So
yeah.
if you say you sell it and you get, if you did sell it or just gave it away, the $180,000, okay, I still need, $2.6 million in transfers. And you're only saving $200,000. And then actually this year, we've seen an increase in the rentals. We removed that preferred caterer. Everyone could bring in their own food or their own caterer if they want to do it. We've had an increase in outings. We took back the liquor license, and we've seen an increase in liquor sales, or at least the profit we're making. And so looking back at 8/31/2023 and comparing it to 8/31 of this year we're at positive $31,000. Last year it was negative $88,000. So we have made progress. Now we get into November, December. It's some lean months for
Right.
the golf banquet. Hopefully we'll pick up the slack. But it I know people say it's not a park. I have to pay to play there, but I go down there to 3 times a week to pick up the sales, cash, checks, whatever, and make deposits. And I'm seeing that pickleball court that we put in is being used like crazy.
Yeah.
And the Northmont golf team uses it as their home course. So there's other benefits, that maybe people don't see. But
Well, don't they? People that do play golf, if they're Clayton citizens, do they still get a?
They get a reduced rate.
if they buy a season pass,
They get a discount on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and also you talk about grants. We actually got quite a few grants for Meadowbrook,
Yeah.
and we probably put $300,000-$400,000 of the grant money into that thing.
Right.
And the tornado hit.
Tornado
COVID.
hit.
Right.
So we've
all-
redone
yeah.
that. But if we close that golf course with the stipulations of those grants, we got to pay those back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So even if you close it, you would actually lose more money in the first couple of years than you would if you just operate it.
So let's just talk numbers for a minute. Let's say Meadowbrook didn't exist. Do we still need to have this?
So I'll
earned
just
income?
talk from the fire department. So we'll even take last year, for example, with Meadowbrook. We close it. I get that $180,000 that we put towards Meadowbrook.
Right.
I'm still $600,000 I still need for the general fund
Right.
that we don't have.
Right. Police.
You give you that $180,000, I'm still $1.1 million short.
Service.
Same. I'm not going to be able to pay a road still. I mean, that's literally not even a mile road.
Yeah. So Meadowbrook is. It really is more for people that complain about. It's more smoke and mirrors. It really is not why we need to have this.
It's not the answer to your. It's not the answer to your troubles.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do have to think, what else are we going to offer the citizens of Clayton? We don't have a town center.
Right. We
So
don't.
what do we offer? Why come to Clayton?
Right. Well, and that's a very good point, Chief, because it has become the center of a lot of activity. And once we took it over, once the city took it over, and because we didn't for the first couple of years, we had other people running it.
Yeah.
But once the city took it over, we've seen improvements every year, and people really have taken taken as our city center. There's a lot of complaints about not having some of the activities that we've had, but now they know why. Pass this levy, and maybe we can get back to having activities.
Well, we looked at cut, do you want to cut services or do you want to cut events?
Right.
I mean, we all cut staffing and operational things that we are no longer doing, and so that we had to balance that with events. It can't just be our leaf pickup. It's $60,000 or $60,000 to $70,000 put leaf pickup back there. So what person were we going to lay off to make that happen?
Right.
We're going to do the same thing for events. With all the events out there, it's another person we're going to have to lay off. We didn't want to get in that position where we're laying people off, so we made reductions in our budgets. We didn't replace certain people. That's put a burden on a lot of us. And we eliminated things that did not affect essential services. Leaf pickup and events are not essential services. But to say we didn't cut anything internally within our budgets, we're not running the same as we did before.
No.
If you look at our budgets from 2023 to 2024, they're actually less in 2024 than we're in 2023. With increases in the cost of everything, we actually reduced our budgets. Who's reducing their budget from year 23 to 24?
And that's
Nobody is.
But we did. But
Right.
we did. But we did do that.
And again, I've been here since 1997, and I too worked up through the ranks like Brian, and I've been a chief for 12 years. And my staffing really has never really increased. In fact, we've always gone below. We were a 8 to 9 full-time officer, and relied on part-time. And when that dwindled away, where it's almost absurd anybody using part-time anymore because you're just not going to get them, we've only increased 6 officers. And again, as the city's growing, we're going to need officers.
Right. So let me make one thing clear. You're doing this podcast on your own time.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
And you're not here during city's time.
Nope.
And you're doing it because you believe in what you're saying.
Well, I think for Brian and me, after
27 years.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty much dedicated to the city. We would like to see when we decide to retire, we'd like to see the city move on and do well.
Well, guys, I appreciate you coming here tonight to do this podcast, and I hope it has made a difference.
I just want to say,
if
if people have
sure.
questions, I've spent 34 years in governmental county, so don't rely on somebody post on Facebook. They understand how a TIF works or how the property tax or income tax works.
Yeah.
Call me.
Or they're a forensic accountant.
I mean, you can go to our website. I have the budget on there. I have our annual financial reports on there. You can go to the Ohio checkbook and see every expenditure we make on that website. You can drill down and look at it. Or even, like I said, you can call me and I'll explain it to you. And I'll send you, if you want reports or something we have, I can send that to you. Just ask. And I think that's, misinformation is killer. And get in but we need to get the word out what actually is happening.
Right, and that comes to one announcement and then an explanation. The announcement: there's going to be a town hall where you all are going to be presenting again on September 30th and October 15th. If you miss the September 30th one, at 6:30, and that's going to be held at our city building, the Clayton City Building. On those 2 dates, there's also going to be an online option if you can't make it in person. Also, this is being presented by an organization referred to as Clayton Concerned Citizens, and it's a bunch of volunteers who have become very concerned about this issue, among others, in the city, and a lot of the misunderstandings that exist out there among the people of Clayton. So we decided to formulate this group, do podcasts like this. We have a website at Clayton Concerned Citizens, all one word, .com, and also have a Facebook page for Clayton Concerned Citizens. So we'll be posting on that on a regular basis. May ask you back later. This has been just an exciting hour of titillating information for people that have been listening. And I hope that they take it to heart, and I hope they've learned something tonight.
And
So,
none of us wants to see. We've got good administrators here that are very
Great.
good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. Nobody wants to see it go back 15 years in this city. I mean, I think we're second to none in snow and ice, and I know these two departments are second to none.
oh yeah,
And I don't think anybody wants to see it go back.
I don't either. Let's go forward. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
We are done.